Good morning and welcome to Missoula Real Estate Today. This is Denny Bedard. Missoula Real Estate Today is presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. Diane's been working with buyers and sellers in the Missoula market for over 25 years and shares her insights on the local housing market. Along with her trusted partners, Diane provides complete service for your real estate transaction and brings us guests who provide useful information on industry-related topics and trends. And now, Missoula Real Estate Today on News Talk, KGVO. Hey, good morning. We're sure glad you made Missoula Real Estate Today a part of your weekend. It's presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. And with us on Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate's program, Missoula Real Estate Today, Beckie Peterson, part of the Diane Beck marketing team. Good to see you again.
You too, my old friend. It's wonderful to see you.
Have you summered well so far?
Summered beautifully. I have the scale to prove it.
Come on.
But that's okay. It's all good. It's happiness.
Yeah.
So that's been wonderful. Thank you.
Well, and thank you for coming on in and filling in for Diane. I know she was scheduled this week, but we'll get her in here. She can't run and hide from me forever. So.
Oh, she's closing. So she's at the closing table. We will always let Diane go to the closing table.
One of the things we were talking about the last time she was in a couple months back was just the pace of the market in relation to the time of year. Has this been an unpredictable year in local real estate so far?
You know, first quarter really was. It was different. First quarter just kind of, it's always your slowest quarter. But I mean, it was really untraditionally slow. And second quarter started to pick up, but it was just kind of hit average. But all that pent up is now going absolutely insanely crazy. I was looking on, I think it was Saturday, I opened up to see the number of new listings, and there were like 30. So we're getting some listings, which really was part of our problem. We just didn't have enough inventory to sell. I also think that back in first quarter, there was just some, people were kind of pulling back just based on the government shutdown, changing in interest, just a little uncertainty. And then now they're feeling really comfortable again, to the point that, you know, interest rates are dropping right now. Right. We just are seeing that the Federal Reserve, like we like to say, may have just increased a lot of people's chances for lower mortgage rates coming up, you know, as we go forward. Right now, they've dropped down right around 3.75, which, you know, everyone was saying, oh, we're going to have 5. You know, and we were up near that back in November, but now, and they thought it would stay there and grow, but it hasn't. It's consistently dropped ever since. So it doesn't always translate when they do those cuts to mortgage rate declines, but we've really got some great interest rates right now. So it's a great time to be talking to your mortgage lenders about that.
Well, and it's probably hard to pinpoint an average. I was going to ask you, are supply and demand numbers about average, or are you seeing any movement one way or the other? Obviously, you are, and yet because of the slowness, I suppose as slow as maybe the first quarter of the year was, and spring was just kind of, you know, la-dee-da, took its sweet time rolling. It probably still averages out, but just in a really odd way.
I think it will. I really think by the end of the year it will. Things are up. And I think at the end of the year, it may come into the same as 18, where we have a good year. But things are moving quickly when priced correctly. Yeah. So when we're seeing a well cared for home and it's priced correctly, boy, you know, we're seeing multiple offers on that stuff. Or people will say, I want to go see this, and I'll call the agent because it just hit the market, and they'll say, well, I've got an offer. It's like, well, do you want to go in and compete, or do you want to let them go with that? And they're like, oh, I'll let them go with it, because they're already in the process. They're already communicating back and forth and negotiating. And so it's, and that's everything from homes that are obviously, I hate to use the word affordable, but down in the 250, 300 range where, you know, or 323, you know, under 350. But that's happening surprisingly in houses that are in that 600, you know, 450, 550, $600,000 market. And you're like, wow, that's a new one. You know, I shouldn't say it's new, but it was a little bit surprising. But that too goes to show inventory on market, locations, and whatnot.
I assume that term priced correctly. That can be a little tricky for a realtor because price correctly to a realtor, I'm sure, is oftentimes different than price correctly to a seller.
And a seller always decides the selling price.
Oh, sure.
And we give them all of the proper, we call it a CMA, a comparable market analysis, and give them all the information we can to help them make a great decision. But in a seller's market, they want to see. So they'll be like, well, we can say this is where it will likely sell. And that's okay, but I want to try here. And sometimes that's okay. But sometimes you do that and then you lose the people that will go after it right when it hits. And you end up having to lower back down. Well, then, you've wasted time. You've lost people that didn't look at it because it was out of their price range. So it's a very delicate balance. And I like to say that Diane deals with most of our sellers. So she gets to do that. And she's so good at it. And I'm glad to say that we've got, properties we listed a week ago. They're under contract now because those people made really good decisions with the advice that Diane gave them. And yeah.
This is Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate, and our guest this week, Beckie Peterson, part of the Diane Beck marketing team at Windermere. And Beckie, let me kind of continue on that thought. If sellers get in the mindset that, hey, it's Missoula, this will be an easy sell, and then it's not. For whatever reason, but then it's not. You touched on maybe some of the reasons it might not be, but you have to kind of reset their expectations, I would imagine. Where do you start? Price obviously might be a factor, but what else might come into play where you have to just sort of, I don't know if I want to say remanage, but the expectations not quite being met, at least in the seller's mind, not being met by the realtor. You've got to kind of readjust a few things. We do.
One thing that the Beck team does, and Diane's had these systems that are really great, is a lot of things that can alleviate those issues is communication. I would say the number one, if you were to go read the number one complaint about real estate or realtors, is that communication. And so having great communication with your seller, constantly saying, okay, when people show the house, we get feedback. We let them know what that feedback is. And if we're not getting showings, that's usually their frustration. Well, why aren't more people looking at my house? What's wrong?
Yeah.
And if you're not getting showings, the saying is people are not rejecting your home. They're rejecting your price. And at that point, you say, well, we might need to lower it if we're not getting any showings, because then if they're not looking at it, it's overpriced. Then the next expectation might be, well, okay, everyone's looking at it, but nobody's making offers. Okay, well, now let's look at what that feedback was. Is it that there's something wrong in their mind? Are the rooms, are we overpriced maybe for the way the house is designed? Does it have some drawbacks with really small rooms, or it's older and it's chopped up and it hasn't been updated, or things like that? But it all really comes back to price. 9 times out of 10. Sometimes it might just mean that we need to go in and try and stage, or, it's tough when maybe you've lived in a house for 30 years and you've got some stuff and you're trying to sell, but you're trying to live. Mm-hmm. And a lot of advice we give is, well, you're going to be moving, so let's pack up to move now and live with the basics. I'd love to say, watch a few Marie Kondo and she'll put you into shape real quick. And I know that feeling because I look at my home and think, if I were to ever sell, which I'm happy where I'm at, but if I did, I look around because I see houses all the time and go, wow, this would take 2-3 weeks to get ready on the market. It's all the little things that, we live at home, but when we sell, we have to kind of not make it look like we live there. We have to make it so somebody else can imagine living there.
Well, buyers have to make decisions too. It's like, okay, well, these people are asking $320,000, let's say, but I'm budgeting $285,000. Mm-hmm. Do I cave and meet their price because I really want the house, or do I think that the market maybe slowing down just a little bit means my offer has a chance? But we're not really there at this stage of the game, are we?
It depends on the house, the location, the price point that you're at, mm-hmm. and how long the house has been on the market. So if it just hit the market within the last 24 hours and we've been looking and we run out, I'm going to do a couple of things. After we look at those, if it's checked off your things on your list, you really want this home, where have you been pre-approved at? Then we're going to do a quick comparable market analysis on the reverse side, and I'm going to say, do I believe it's been priced correctly? But at the very end of the day, I'm going to call that other agent and see how many showings there have been and if there's any other offers coming in. Because if we have no other offers, our negotiation tactic will be completely different than if we find out that they're going to get 3 offers. Then we have to decide, how is this the house you really want? What are we willing to pay for it? And what can we do in our buy-sell to make it attractive to the seller? And that's not always just the money. That can be closing timeframes. That can be, are you a cash buyer or are you financing? Let's make sure we don't have any hiccups that are going to come along the way. Let's have a pre-approval letter from our lender saying we've already been pre-approved, given, they always have stipulations. But if we're pre-approved by the bank, that means the bank's done a little bit more than just pull a quick credit report. And so that's really important. And in today's market, I want my buyers to have that pre-approval letter already ready to go because it makes us more powerful. We're really looking at our timeframes, how quickly can we get things done and get through the process, because a lot of them, and then be flexible to that. So it's not always just price. That can be a big one, but making sure our ducks are completely in row so that when we walk in the door, we're a very attractive buyer that looks like we're going to make this process seamless.
Yeah, those are excellent points. Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate, and our guest, Beckie Peterson. Beckie is part of the Diane Beck marketing team at Windermere. Let's talk about the Diane Beck team. In this era, it would be pretty tough to be as successful as Diane is without a great supporting cast. Who are you? What roles do you play to not only benefit Diane, of course, but buyers and sellers?
Well, the nice thing about our team is you've got, in any real estate, you're always talking with the other people in your office, your broker, other agents. Yeah. And for us, we've got our team. We've got Diane with 30 years experience. She has been on, I think every board, has every designation. So she's got that experience. And then, she mainly deals with primarily with our sellers. She does deal with a lot of our buyers too, but she deals a lot with our sellers and the CMAs and doing those comparable market analysis. I came in, I have previous real estate experience from back in 2004, the last time we kind of went through this type of boom, 2004 to 10. And then I went back into into my marketing and radio background and did that for a while and then wanted to come back. And Diane and I have known each other for 30 years. So I joined her team as her buyer's agent. And although I can still bring in my listings and whatnot, it's great because then I hand them to her and she does all that great work. I get to spend my time really focusing on the buyers and helping them with my background of knowing Missoula, born and raised here, having kids, living, enjoying all from the north all the way down, spending time down in Hamilton. I'm able to really help them focus in and find what it is they're looking for, the area, the things that really fit their life. So I focus on them, and I get to it's really kind of neat because I've gained a lot of really cool new friends. By the time I'm done, I'm pretty proud to say so far they've all, remained friends, and we join on Facebook. It's not like we, socialize all the time, but we're all planning on it. So that helps with our team. Then we have Becky Whiteout, which is horribly confusing for everyone because you've got Becky and Becky.
Right. And Diane Beck.
So we like to call it, Beck to the third degree. And that's kind of fun. So it does get confusing. But Becky Whiteout used to be our buyer's agent, and then she relocated down to Texas. But she's our transaction coordinator. So once we go under contract on something, she walks them from that point to the closing table. And she's got the patience of Job. Oh, man, does that gal dot an I and cross a T, I'll tell you. It's unbelievable. I've always been really, really impressed with the way and she almost makes it look kind of effortless, just sort of, gotta do it. Oh, she does. And the amount of work she took, she's terrific. And she knows, so she understands when we're going through inspections on both sides of the fence, buyers and sellers, and just making sure everything's there so that, again, we hit our closing, it's seamless, and our clients feel like, again, it's communication. So they're getting constant communication and updates about what's going on, what we do next. We're going to be looking for this. Oh, this came up, but it's okay. Here's how we deal with it. And it's done, and I've already started the steps. I mean, she's incredible. And then we have Aston Kinsella, and he is kind of our just go-to assistant on everything. And he'll be a sophomore at the U this year. And I love this, I hate to say kid, this young man, because he's obviously good with technology, and he's just so quick to say, hey, would you go, and we have a lot of programs, as any industry does, go into this program, will you do this, and da-da, and he's like, sure, I can figure it out. Very rarely does he say how. He just gets it done, and he's been able to be just such a great help for a lot of our just the groundwork that has to be done, putting up signs, taking down signs, creating flyers and marketing, and getting things in our physical files or putting them into our digital files, because we're old school. We triplicate everything. We've got our digital files, we've got our solid file, our file, and then we have the files that are required by our office that we upload to, and they're all different programs. Yeah. So he's awesome. So yeah, between all that, we're there and we're handing rolls and sending. I mean, right. It's nothing to get texts and emails late at night from us, because one of us is up and our brains are going. 9 times out of 10, it's Diane, and you wake up and you got a few because she was up, doing her stuff, and right. It's great though. It's just really fun to have that much energy going all the time.
Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. Our guest, Beckie Peterson, part of the Diane Beck marketing team. You brought some really fun literature here, and I know that we can't possibly get to all of this in the remaining 14 minutes, but I'd like to start with a few FAQs, some of these frequently asked questions. You look at a couple of them and you sort of go, well, duh. Then others you go, wow, that never would have occurred to me. But just let's start with how long does the buying process take? You get asked that all the time.
So from the time that we get an accepted contract between a buyer and a seller, it's usually about 45 days. So that gives us time to get an inspection done and respond to that inspection. For you to, for the buyer to get acceptable home insurance, for any items in the inspection to get negotiated, for lending to be able to have their time to process all the files and then get to the closing table. So it's usually about 45 days. If we're doing any kind of special loans, which would be a VA loan, a veteran loan, or a rural development USDA loan, those we try and put in 60 days, because those processes just take just a little bit longer, because there's always that one more notch in the financing side, and sometimes a little bit longer because there's specific inspectors and whatnot, or appraisers. So 45, 60 days.
How many properties does the typical buyer look at? Is there a typical buyer, Beckie?
Well, I'm fortunate. I've had some really great people. And I would say on average, it would be 5 to 10 homes if we're not, if we're able to find some on the market. Then, yeah, it would be 5 to 10 homes. I've done, and there's many agents that have done far more than that. And then there's been a few where it's been a couple. You see 1 or 2 and they just know it. But usually those people have been looking in some fashion, whether online or whatever, they really know what they want. They've owned a home before, so maybe they're moving and it's not a first-time buyer. But 5 to 10 is the average. But like I said, it can be many, many more. I had one, about a month ago, and we did 3 and bought 1.
Frequently asked questions of the Diane Beck Windermere Real Estate marketing team. As a prospective buyer, when should I make an offer?
Well, in what I would call a neutral market or a buyer's market, I would always want somebody to sleep on it. Hey, we're talking about this one, go home, sleep on it, wake up and make sure. In today's market, depending on the situation we're in, if there's going to be other offers, we're going to make it right then and there, and we're going to go back to the office and write the offer and get it out and get it done right away. But sometimes, people know what they know and they know what they want, and we're going to go right then. A lot of times, I'd like to go back a couple times, because what you see the first time, you go back the second time and are like, oh, I didn't notice this or this or this. So depending on the negotiation we're in, the number of properties we've seen, and if we're competing or you've lost out on a bunch. But if all the stars align and I can have it exactly the way I want, I'll work on the documents, but I want them to sleep on it. It's a big, big purchase. And then I'd like to go back a second time.
I'll have you elaborate a little bit here, because I asked you about this earlier in the program, but some more specifics on this. How much should I offer? I know that is such a tricky thing, but obviously people ask that all the time. But how much should I offer?
Well, again, the first thing we're going to do, we go find this home. We love it. It's got everything you want on your, maybe on your needs list, and it's got some of the wants, and it's got all the must-haves. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go pull a quick comparable market analysis of all the properties like that in the same area, similar properties within the last 6 months. And we're going to see if what the agent has priced it at, or the seller has priced it at, I should say, is comparable to the market. And then we can make a great decision on that to decide, do we offer full price? Do we go down 20,000? Do we offer 90%? Do we offer 95? What do we do? So that is how we're going to decide what to make an offer at. And then, again, it's also going to decide on the competitiveness of this particular listing.
All right. I'm going to move on to the next one here. These are very interesting, and I'm sorry. We're going to have you back, Becky, real soon so we can continue on these. But you brought a list of things you absolutely should not do. And I think that refers to when you are the prospective buyer, or if you're under contract, maybe even them. But let me just lump the first three together and let you take off on that, because it's very interesting. Things you absolutely should not do. Don't quit your job. That makes sense. But don't change your job. Don't get a promotion. What is all that about?
Well, it comes down to the financing and how, and lenders can really go into this, but the first thing I'll say in this is communicate all this with your lender. But the don't quit your job is pretty obvious. If you don't have a job, you can't show an income. And when they go to recertify right before closing, everything that you've provided to the lender, and all of a sudden you don't have a job, obviously you're done. Changing your job. Okay, well, you've had part of your, obviously, credit app and your approval is based on your current job, the history that you have with that company, how long you've had it, how steady is that job, what's the likeliness that you're still going to be there and be able to pay your mortgage. Well, if right in the middle of the process, I work for Town Square Media, and then I'm, 20 days in, I get an offer to go over to K-Pax, and I switch. I don't have the employment history with that company. I'm now on probably a probationary period with my new job. I don't have paychecks to give you verification of income. So it changes everything, and it can put a big stopgap. It doesn't mean you may not be able to get the house, but it can delay things a long ways. And your contracts and your buy-sells are reading that, we're going to close within this amount of time, 45 days on this date. And you might have what we call a 10-day third-party period, which is if the financing needs any extra documentation, we can delay that closing by 10 days without having to get agreement of both buyer and seller. Well, when you change jobs, that's going to delay that far more than that, and it could totally change your approval. And the last one, which sounds weird, don't get a promotion. So it may be that, again, that changes your employment history with the company. It does things. So it's not to say don't take it. Maybe just ask them if it can't go active until the day after closing. And just on that one, I would say just talk to your lender. They're going to tell you, hey, can you just, do this? No, that's not going to affect it. Yes, it is. But it's a change in your employment history. And so that does change things.
All right. Other things you should absolutely not do. The next one on the list. Don't buy any large ticket items, in parentheses, like $5 or more. Come on, Peterson.
Well, here's the point of that. I will say this. You may buy it with your cash, but when you're doing, again, you're setting up your loan with your lender, they want to know how much cash do you have on hand, what are your expenses, and then they're looking at all your credit card balances. So if you go out and you purchase, and we joke with the $5, but you make a $50 purchase on a credit card when they're trying to keep your credit card balances where they're supposed to be. Again, they go in right before closing within about 3 days, and they repull that stuff to make sure that you didn't go do that. And believe it or not, I had a client last year, and he'd made like a $100 purchase on his credit card. And they were like, oh, no. So he quickly paid it off and everything else. But it all depends, too, on your credit, your situation. But again, just don't go out and have fun with your credit card. Right. Just stay, those 45 days, just stay away from it. Outside of, you do your regular gas or anything else. But we just try and avoid all that.
But I could see where that temptation might enter in. So one more on the should not do's. I want to leave time for some of the things that will most likely happen. But the next one on the things you should not do: don't make David Copperfield deposits. all funds need to be traceable. What do you mean?
So, that sounds funny, but somebody, let's say it's they also are checking again your deposits, everything else. All of a sudden, you're running an average on your checking or accounts or whatever, and they see a big deposit. Well, they want to know where that came from. So if you have a cash deposit, they're going, where'd you get the money? And they don't like that. Now, if you can say, oh, here, it was a gift from my parents, or it was a dividend check, whatever. You just need to be able to back it up. Don't go make big cash deposits. Don't go sell something, get $5,000 cash and not have a receipt and go deposit the cash. Sounds silly, but they don't like it.
Okay. All right. This is Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. Also, a special thanks to some of Diane's marketing partners that help bring you Missoula Real Estate Today. Rob Fleming with Man Mortgage, Miles Link of Opportunity Bank of Montana, and Carol Blodgett from MakeItMissoula.com. We got a few more minutes here, Becky. Let's move on to, excuse me, this will most likely happen. You will not be told how much money to bring to closing until the day of your closing, and many times only hours or minutes before the closing?
Well, so what happens is your lender is finishing up the closing statement and all of they're providing the title company with all of maybe their expenses for fees. And the other thing is, if closing gets put off by a day or closes a day early, when we do our interest that you're paying on your new mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, they're all calculated right down to the day. So if that day changes, all those numbers have to change. And so they don't have the final figures based on what you're going to have to bring to the table, based on how much is the mortgage company putting in on your behalf. So how much do you have to come in with between what they're doing and what your down payment is? It's going to fluctuate. So you're not going to get that. People will say, okay, how much do I have to bring? Well, the exact amount. Now you're going to have a good idea, but the exact amount of the check down to the penny that you need to bring in a cashier's check or that we're going to transfer in, we're not going to know right up until then. Sometimes we'll know it a couple days in advance because we'll get that. We always get about 3 days in advance, we'll get the closing statement that we get to look over and make sure it's all right. And that figure's on there. But if anything changes and we find it wrong, it may not be.
I want to jump to the bottom one here. You were talking about this a little bit. I'd like you to follow up on it, though. The bottom one on things that will most likely happen. The mortgage company will most likely pull another credit report on you days before or even the day of your closing. Very important. And that deals...
That goes back to all those other things you were laughing about.
Don't spend $5.
Don't make a large purchase, like even $5. Don't change. Don't do all those things. And the reason for that is we all know that in 45 days, you're going to make a credit card payment. You're going to, we hope you are. You're going to pay your current bills. You're not going to have something, because, in 45 days, a lot of things can show up on your credit. Something that was negative or positive, but they want to make sure it's still positive and that you didn't have a big hit during those 45 days that can affect them. So they very, very common. It's a re-verification. And so you do need to expect it. And that's why we guide all those other things of do not do this. Because it's happened. It's caused sale fails. It's caused buyers not to get to buy a home. And that's heartbreaking.
Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate, with Beckie Peterson from the Windermere Real Estate Diane Beck team. We have run out of time. Other than to say, hey, we got to track you down. How do we get a hold of the Diane Beck team at Windermere?
Well, you can call us at our office. We all have our cell phones too. You can reach me at 406-829-6003. You can find me on Facebook. You can find all of us. We have Facebook. We have our Move to Missoula website, which is fantastic. Has great information about the entire process. And a lot of our listings are everyone, you can do searches through there. So catch us at Windermere or call, text, email. We'd love to talk to you.
Great job. Good seeing you again.
You too.
Thank you for listening to Missoula Real Estate Today. We hope you found this morning's information to be helpful. If you have any suggested topics for any future Missoula Real Estate Today programs or any questions about buying or selling, contact Diane Beck with Windermere Real Estate. Email DianeBeck@Realtor.com or visit her website, homesinmissoula.com. That's homesinmissoula.com. We'll see you next time on Missoula Real Estate Today.